Perfecting and Reforming Personal Religion, Chapter 14, Breakdown. The previous chapter, ending on the note of wisdom, ended on the note of wisdom for a specific reason. And that reason being that the more wisdom our faith is able to acquire, the easier it will be for our faith to manage its own conversation. The higher our faith's intellect is, the easier it will be for our conversation's conscience and for our devotional confidence to be able to manage itself without us. And that's the complete goal. The complete goal is to remove us from the equation. To remove us from the equation. To remove our human being from believing that it needs to stimulate a spiritual experience. Most often than not, that's the case. Where it is our human being leading, or even I should say misleading, our conversation to believe that its experience is philosophical, is devotional, is spiritual, is holistic. But it is our human being that is guiding the experience. It is our human being that is inquisitive. It is our human being that is desiring to know not what is within us. It feels like what is within us wants to know, but we're just operating from the wrong us. The intention for acquiring wisdom in handling, in experiencing the living God's devotional will for our conversation is so that our faith's intellect may be able to care for itself. And this is a perfect transition into the next chapter, chapter 14, according to God in the Spirit, which is quoted from 1 Peter 4:6, which is counsel saying to live according to God in the Spirit. And then in the same opening paragraphs, or in the same opening words to this chapter, to go along with that verse, another verse is quoted, Romans 12 and verse 2, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And so this kicks off perfectly where we, the reader, need to be. It is that our mind needs to be transformed. Our devotional mind, primarily or firstly. We've given routine to the human side of things. We've given routine to a human religious experience. That has gotten us to where it has gotten us. And now, if our faith is as genuine as we believe it is, if our experience is as genuine as we believe it is, if we believe that this is real, there will come a point in time where our faith will say, I'm real. Let's really do this. And what does it mean to really do this? What does it mean to really commit to a real devotional conversation? It means seeing things differently. It means doing things differently. Thus far, we have been allowing a transformation of sorts within our human being. We have done what we have done for the sake of the divine eye's credit. We have not done what we have not done for the sake of the divine eye's credit. We have researched this and gone to this website and taken in this orthodoxy. We have let go of that tradition. We have done this and have not done that for the sake of our human beings, again, being inquisitive. But now the Bible's giving us something different here. The Bible's asking for a transition. Transitioning from the human experience to the devotional experience. And that involves living according to God in the Spirit. And that word spirit translating to mind. That's why it says, be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Or in Ephesians, be renewed in the spirit of your mind. It is mind. The Bible is asking for our devotional mind to be transformed, to be renewed. This word transform, this word renew, it can be bottled down to redeem or deliver. So the deliverance, right? The deliverance that we are looking for, it is a deliverance of mind. Why? Be renewed in the spirit of your mind. Spirit equals mind. John 4:24, God is a spirit. God is mind, not body and flesh. So if John 4:24 is going to be held to be true, then everything associated with that also has to go into accord. And the experience has to follow what is written there. And that's exactly what Bible lays out. The conversation is to be transformed by the renewing of its mind, because it is to learn, quote unquote, and as it is written within this chapter, truth, and this truth understood to be science, and this science understood to be philosophy. So the truth of the living God is the science of the living God. And by living according to God in the spirit of the mind, piece by piece, this is understood. And being understood, it is cultivated. And so this chapter lightly touches on the issue of quote unquote truth. What is it? What is the truth of the living God? And it is explained as the name of the living God written within. And it is further explained as the name of the quote unquote Son written within. Now, what Son is to be written within? And again, context matters. Context matters. The ways in which these authors are using these very, very vague terms as truth, as spirit, as righteousness, as Son. These terms have a context that have to be understood. Because, and also name. Name, Son, truth, righteousness, spirit. All of these are terms that are to be applied according to the context that they are in and not into what we would give them. From what we know from a human experience, from a human spiritual or religious experience, that has to be cut off. We can no longer allow our conversation to live in that manner of defining things from a human spiritual or religious experience point of view. And so the truth is a name written within, and the name of that Son written within. Now, this is all code language that this book will get into and repeat and enlarge and further explain. But this chapter is introducing terms and illustrations as the previous ones, but it's just building on it. And then paragraph 12 explains how the name of the Son is to be written within, and that is by doing the will to know the doctrine. And so we have a bit of a hint of what this quote-unquote Son is. Because this term Son is in no reference to a personage. This term Son is in no way a reference to a figure, to a human being, to a demigod, to whatever we naturally or traditionally assume it is or associate it with. That's not what this is talking about. These are terms, pitching content for terms. These are terms pitching content for terms. The truth of the living God is a term representing the will of the living God. The truth of the living God is a term representing the will of the living God. The will of the living God is a science. The science of the living God is the name of the living God. The name of the living God is actually the name of the Son. And the name of the Son is actually an epithet or an appellation for an act of something being written within our conversation. So these are all terms backed by other terms that have a concrete meaning in the intention of the Creator for our conversations, thoughts, feelings, and experience. This Son in reference, despite the figure we may have in our mind from what we see up on our walls or in a church or in a book or whatever figure we have, that's not what the scriptures or the author that is writing these scriptures is pointing to. This book will get into that. But for now, this chapter is stimulating thought on what these terms mean and in their context, how to manage them. And in paragraph 15, we get a better idea of what it means to live according to God in the Spirit by it meaning to join into the same conversation of the living God's chief apostle. And that's more of a hint of what this term Son is. Because if we go back to the book of Isaiah, if we go back to the book of Isaiah and we read, "By his knowledge shall my righteous servant justify many," we can actually hear a separation there. By his knowledge shall my righteous servant justify many. By his knowledge, left hand, shall my righteous servant, right hand, justify many. These are two different things. The servant is different from the knowledge. The knowledge is different from the servant. It is the understanding that is to justify. Traditional religious thought has unlawfully combined the knowledge and the servant to where this new combination is what is given to justify. And so here we have a belief on a figure entitled Son that is given for justification, and our belief should go on to that figure. According to the Bible, that's wrong. According to the Bible, that's wrong. This knowledge and this servant are two different things. What actually came out of the servant's mouth was this knowledge. What actually came out of that servant's mouth was the name of the living God. And if the name of the living God came out of his mouth, then the truth of the living God came out of his mouth. And if the truth of the living God came out of his mouth, then the science of the living God came out of his mouth. And if the science of the living God came out of his mouth, then the will of the living God came out of his mouth. And if the will of the living God came out of his mouth, again, the name of the living God came out of his mouth. And if the name of the living God came out of his mouth, the Son of the living God also came out of his mouth. The name of the living God is that Son. That Son is a name. Our traditional culture has us confounding these two, this name and the living God's chief apostle, to where we would mix them, to where now the living God's chief apostle has become, quote unquote, mythologically divine because of what is joined to him, that name of the living God. This is again false. The Bible makes a separation, and so should we. When it comes to our faith's intellect, when it comes to our faith educating itself, we have to be very careful on how we raise it, on what we allow it to come across, just like a real child, just like our own mind. We have to be careful. If we're going to let our faith grow, we have to let our faith grow. We have to put our faith by itself so it can grow by itself and give it nutrients from the only source that nutrients can come from. No other outside concoctions, prescriptions, nothing is really needed because we have everything. The only thing that's the problem is our human being. Our faith is ready to be alone for its growth and development, but is our human devotional or religious experience ready for that as our faith is calling for it? That's the issue. And that's a personal problem that only we can solve. But should we? The chapter ends by letting us know that by doing so, we allow our faith to gain strength against death. Death will no longer have hold over our conversation if we can allow it to safely and peacefully grow. And that's also the point, and that's the most important point, because it is our conversation that we hold to a death, or should I, in a better sense, hold to a religious slavery, holding to a religious slavery through religious thoughts, opinions, beliefs, baptisms, rites, rituals, so on and so forth, that we grow accustomed to, that keep our faith's intellect low. The more that we can allow our faith's intellect to be given back to the one that gave it to us, acquiring that wisdom and exercising it, that is how we understand context of what we're going through, and that we're able to better apply context of what we're going through. Applying that context of what we're going through, we can learn the definition of sin, we can learn the definition of death, not according to what we assume, but according to how the authors of the Bible give it. That's what matters. That's what matters. And this is such a strict experience because, again, our faith is coming from the religious world and our conversation is conceived within the womb of our denominational church, belief, tradition. And so we are conceived in religious error naturally. Conceived in religious error, we have to do what we can to purge, to purify, better word, sanctify, better word, justify our devotional conscience. This is what it means to live according to God in the Spirit. And this is right counsel, because it leads to us having a better understanding, not of just the living God's devotional character, not even of us as human beings, and not even of our own faith, but of another. It leads to us better feeling benevolently and empathically for another. A well-rounded human growth and development is what this experience is calling for. And if we're tuning into it, that means what is within us, even though we do not perceive it, what is within us understands that something is missing and is looking to have that filled.